Right. Yesterday I made an executive decision that we wouldn't get into the office stuff because that would be too much of a rat hole to leave off in the evening. So what we did in the evening instead was we just looked at cleaning up a little bit of the database representation for that one-to-many mapping. So we talked about one-to-many, many-to-one. We talked about the inverse mapping, the owning and the non-owning side of a relationship. Right, that stuff all feeling pretty okay. Was there any questions about that before we keep going? So what we're going to do this morning is we went to the trouble of making this relationship between offices and companies. So might as well use it, right? We don't have any UI yet for we don't have any front end yet for adding offices to a company. So that's what we're going to start off with. I've given you a couple of these exercises now, right? Where we need to make the UI for persons, right? So we did the UI for persons. That was like the first one that we did. Then we essentially kind of copy and pasted that to make UI for companies, and totally, to be honest, like the UI for offices is going to be very much the same, right? We're going to have an add office, an edit office, right? View office, and a company is going to be able to show a list of office names, right? You'd be able to click on. So it's gonna seem very much the same, but when we actually get into the implementation details of this one, there's going to be quite some substantial differences in the sort of code that we end up needing to write. So I'm setting you up to be complacent about this, like, oh, okay, we've done this before, I know how to do this, but then the devil's in the details. We're going to get to see some interesting stuff. Same as before, probably the set of tasks for the morning is going to look like, here, let's get an assignment. Assignment, all right, so implement office views, right? Add, edit, view, right? Implement office controller. We're also going to need to edit the company view. Show list of offices. Add link to add office, etc. Right? So just take care of the views first, and then later we'll implement the controller, right? I always like to start out with the views first because that informs, again, that tells us what we need in our model, right? It's sort of UI driven development. All right.
So we should forget about companies for offices. How is that going to work out? The user, when will you add the company? To the offices or from the offices to the company?
From the company. We want the company page to have an add office link. So to be
so you should have offices already populated, so that you can pick and choose from there. It's a foreign key, right?
No. No, we'll, like, anytime we create an office, it'll be for a particular company. So you're already starting to see, like, a little complexity of this. Yeah, that's why I want to talk about the views first before we even get into the controllers. Make sure we understand what this is supposed to look like. Get this on recording. Yeah, so it's kind of funny, right? Because in the database, the office has the foreign key into the company. In other words, the office is the owner side of that relationship in the database. But in our object our object way of thinking about things, it's the other way around, right? The company owns its offices.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My subtle psychological pressure in the back row has worked to some degree, so let's move on. All right. So here, this is a purely mechanical question, but if I was going to copy and paste from any of these existing views, which one should I choose? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Office. Yeah. Oh, and why is that? Yeah, they both have address information in them. Yeah. All right. All right. So the thing that we usually do here is we find and replace. So let's start with that, but we're gonna have to do some a little bit of extra work. So we've got add office. We're gonna post to an office, but we actually need something in the model here.
Company.
Yeah, we actually need to know which company we're adding an office to, right? See, the reason why this is different, the reason why this set of exercises is going to be different from our earlier ones is because previously the collection, sort of the collection that contained our persons and our companies was just the database, right? Just sort of the top level. Whereas now the collection that contains offices is actually some particular entity. So it's not, we can't just like select everything from the database. We have to be associated with some particular entity in the database. So we need an input type equals hidden. Oops, can't type. Name equals company ID, right? We need to know which company we're adding an office to. Who figured this out?
Office.company. Oh, you have a company already.
Yeah, we don't have an office yet, but we do have a company. Who figured this out? Nobody. All right, that's fine. It's early.
So, are we trying to provide a list of companies to pick from?
No. No, the way that the navigation is going to work is we'll be looking at a company, and on that company we'll have a little thing that we can click that says add office. So we'll be adding an office to that company.
Oh, I added it as an input.
Oh,
not this way.
like a drop down or something?
Yeah, so it's like how you provide name, street, city for
Oh, sure.
office.
Sure.
Likewise, you would also have a field to say what company.
Sure.
So it's like, I'm adding this off. That's how I did it.
Yeah, that's totally valid. Yeah. And then how would you get to the add office page?
That I didn't think about.
Oh, okay. See, I was sort of figuring that the way you get to the add office page is from a company rather than from the top level. I mean, just
Sure.
they're
No,
both
just
equally
like
valid.
see
Yeah, it's
what
different
you're
ways of thinking about it.
trying
Yeah.
to-
Yeah. All right. So we have a company ID, and probably when we're adding an office, we don't want our little escape valve to be to go back to the contact list. We probably want to go back to the company that we came from, right? So we had a good way to do that, right?
URL.
Yeah, company.url, right? Back to what?
Company list. Back to company.
Back to, yeah, and we actually know which company we came from, the company name. So if I'm at Cisco and I'm adding an office to Cisco, but then I want to cancel and go back, go back to Cisco. Right? So that's I think what my add page ought to look like. That's my way of thinking about it anyway. Like I said, there's no right answers here. This is just kind of how I was thinking about it. All right, how about the edit? All right, well, we need to do the usual thing, right? Find office. All right, so we're editing an office. What do you guys think about this view?
The question is, do we allow changing the company, the parent?
Let's say no. Let's say no.
In the same way, we would have hidden field, right, for a company? Or no?
Good question. Do we need to?
What was the question?
The question was, do we need to have, like we did in the ad page, we had a hidden field for the company. Do we need that here?
I think it's not needed because we're not going to.
We have the office ID, right?
We have the company because it's associated with the office. Yeah. Yeah. So as long as we know which office we're working with, we don't need to. Having a company field would just be redundant. So that's good. That's a good thing to think about. So office ID, office address, name, street, city, state, zip, edit. This actually looks okay. The only thing again is that we don't want to go back to the contact list. We want to go back to office.company.url. Right? Back to office.company.name.
One question. So
Mhm.
if we were to allow changing the company, in that case, would we need that hidden field? To say right now it's associated with this company.
Well, it
association
wouldn't
may
be
change.
a hidden field ananymore. It'd be like
Sort of
it'd be a drop down, and so
Okay.
yeah. So but yes, yeah, we would need that. We would need a field for company ID. And we're going to implement something similar to that later on today. Yeah. All right. So that's the edit page. So the edit page, the model is going to be what we expect, right? The edit page, the model will just be office. But the add page, the model is actually company. So that's right. Our add pages before, our add page, the model has been nothing, right? Here we actually have a model. Model's going to be company. All right. In view, what about view? Oops. Do my find and replace.
Just have company name somewhere.
Well, probably same thing, right? Office.company.url, office.company.name. Yeah. Good enough, right?
You should also display the name of the company, right? Associated with the.
Well, I've got it here. I don't know. Maybe say it's good enough. Yeah, you can certainly do it though. All right. We've got a small problem, which is that Office needs to have a URL. Right. Yeah. So Office needs to. Well, what did we have before in our entities? Contact was the thing that had a get URL method, right?
No, it shouldn't be edit office, right? It should be edit company.
If we're on the view office page, we should be able to view, or we should be able to edit the office that we're viewing.
Oh, this is the view office.
Yes. least I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. So, is there any other place where this was referenced? Actually, it strikes me that it's kind of funny. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So we have this. We have a link to offices, and we're going to need a link to offices in one other place as well, right? Go back and look at our little to-do list. Right, our company view, we need to show a list of offices so that we can link to each office that belongs to the company, right? So there's 3 entities in our system now that are going to have URLs associated with them, right? Companies, persons, and offices. And right now they don't share they don't share a good common base class. So we're going to have to here. Let's.
Do we need to have a base class?
Don't need to, but I mean, we want to write. We want to encourage as much code reuse as possible, right? So let's have a little to-do list here. To do, right? Or let's say notes. Get add view needs company in model, right? That was an observation that we had. Basically, these are things that differ from our previous implementations, right? Notes different, right? So our get add view in our controller is going to actually need to populate the model with a company. So that's something different. Another thing we need to do is office entity needs a get URL method, right? So that's another thing that we'll need to change. All right. So that was that view. Now for for company, right? In our company view, we've got this to do here that we just left from yesterday, right? Company needs to show a list of offices. So how do we do that? Anybody implement this?
JSTL we have, right? For loop.
Yeah, we had a JSTL for each, right? For each, there equals office in offices. But it's going to be company.offices, right? Yeah, company.offices. That works, right? Because company has a get offices method. We need that to actually be in a UL tag. All right. So for each office, what do we need? Well, it's gonna be just like our other one, right? So href equals office.url office.name, right? All right, let me check this in. We know that this isn't going to work because we haven't actually implemented the controllers yet, but I want to check this in so that you have it if you haven't done it yet. Okay. What would I do without Git? All right. How are you guys doing? Hey, in the back row, wake up. You with me? You guys with me? I know you've got a release going on, but yeah. So does this make sense? The views that we just put together? Yeah, more or less. Yeah. So we've got an add, right? Our add view is a little bit different because we need to know which company we're adding an office to. We've got an edit, and the edit view is pretty much the same. The only the only sort of interesting thing in the edit view is that we are going, if we want to cancel the edit, we just go back to the office, right? We don't go back to our main contact list.
So right now, Office doesn't have a name, right?
Office should have a name.
Office has a name.
My Office doesn't.
Let's see. Name, address, company.
Yeah, it extends base entity.
Yeah, it's got, although it looks, I screwed something up in the constructor here. Just takes an address. It should, just to be consistent with what we've been doing before. Right. Yeah, but Office should have a name. Office should have a name, address, and a company. Like we said, it's a little bit weird to think about because in the database, the office is the owner of the company, but in our mental model, the company is the owner of the office. Right? Our UI sort of revolves around that. So it's a little bit different between our schema and our actual sort of UI model. Okay. Any questions before we move on to trying to write this controller? Yes, no, maybe? All right. God, is it ever Thursday? It's so Thursday right now. This is killer. This is why 5-day courses don't work. All right. So let's do one quick thing before we go and try to implement this controller, which is we need to since Office needs to have a get URL method just like company and person does. We should probably have another one of these sort of base entity like things.
Why don't you put it in the base entity itself?
Well, because not all of our entities have URLs.
So you want to have like a URL interface, get URL interface?
Something like that. Yeah, I'll call it like a URL entity.
Do you have to call it entity?
It doesn't even have to be an entity. I mean, that's true. But, I mean, we could have other things that aren't even entities. Yeah.
No, typically from a design perspective, do you want to have the interfaces clubbed with the entity classes or put them in a different package? Or what does it mean? What makes sense from this string structure, basically?
How
do people do it?
It really doesn't matter. I have no.
Is there like a set industry?
No, I have no wisdom on that. Especially because I'm not actually going to do this as an interface. I'm going to do this as a concrete class that will just mix in everything else.
So the get URL would be a concrete class?
Yeah, we'll actually have it be concrete. We'll just implement it once, based on class.getName. So let's do that real quick. We'll just do this together because it's not all that interesting necessarily. I'll just have a new class called URL entity. A URL entity is going to have a public string get URL method. And the way that we're going to get a URL is going to be based on the ID of the entity, so it should probably extend from base entity. right? So a URL entity is a specific kind of an entity. So I'll just give you the implementation here. This is something I whipped up. Return get class dot get simple name dot to lowercase plus ID or this was my sort of way of thinking about how to do this in as simple a way as possible.
This get simple name is already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the Java lang
Oh, it's
class.
the class.
Yeah, the Java lang class. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
Yeah, so we'll just if it's a contact, we just want to say contact question mark ID equals whatever a person person ID equals this or whatever. So I was very excited yesterday about the fact that we
that in the base entity itself, right?
we could, but again, some of these entities it doesn't make sense to have URL. So just make a small specialization because I mean it's cheap. All right. I can also say that this is a mapped superclass. Not sure if I even need to do that, but it's fair. All right. So my URL entity. It's my URL entity. And so I just need to do a little bit of cleanup, which is that company needs to not have a getURL method anymore. Contact needs to extend URL entity and not have the abstract getURL.
How come the company class doesn't need to?
Because
How come it doesn't? Did you say company extends from your entity or no?
yes.
Oh,
Indirectly, a contact extends URL entity, right? All contacts have a URL. Office is going to have a
so all
URL.
entities are going to extend from your entity.
Address won't.
Okay.
Yeah, address doesn't have a URL for it. Person.
We don't need the override method.
We don't need the override. All right.
Do you have to put that override annotation?
No. Yeah. So that's a Java question, right? Well, what does the override annotation do in Java?
What's that?
What does the override annotation do in Java? This is purely a Java question. This has nothing to do with Spring or Hibernate or anything. If I want to override a method from a base class, do I need the override annotation or not?
No.
No. Okay, so then what's it good for?
Readable?
Why do we have
Code readable?
Yeah, it's sort of documentation.
Probably
That's
the IDE picks it up when you override method.
the IDE does pick it up.
Yeah, that's how it shows, right?
Although the IDE also can tell without it. Yeah, it figures out without it. It tells the compiler something. It actually changes something in the compiler. No.
I forgot.
Okay. Yeah. When we specify the override annotation, it says this method must override a superclass method. It must. So if you put the override annotation on, for example, set address or something, right? This actually causes a compiler error. It says that set address here. Oops. set address does not, or it says this must override a super type method. So it actually gives you a little bit of a safety net because it's like if you put that annotation, but maybe you misspelled the method name, or you have the wrong type signature or something like that, then the compiler will actually catch that for you. So
Right,
so it's a
so
good idea.
I understand. So if you add that annotation, if something is not right, it's going to tell you.
Yes.
But my question is, what if you don't put that annotation for a method you're really trying to override? It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. If you got it right, then it doesn't matter.
Okay.
If you got it wrong, then you won't have any way of knowing
So
until
what
So
was
let's
the
say
error?
if you have-
until you have bugs at runtime.
So if you have, let's say if you try to override a method, but let's say if you have a typo in the method name or
Mhm.
something, you wouldn't figure out until.
No, it'll catch, right?
No, it
Because there's no.
No, it will not, right?
You
don't have to
What
put
the
kind of
if you don't put
application
the at
doesn't know that
override.
you're overriding?
If you don't put the at override, if you don't, you'll have a problem.
That was my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need the annotation?
Yeah.
So,
No, but if you have the annotation, it will make sure that whatever your function
There
is
is
actually being derived from.
Right.
Exactly. So
Right.
that was my question. Like, why do we need annotation? Because
Right. Right.
So-
It basically, like, you don't have to have it, but it's a good idea. It's safety. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Thanks.
Yep. That's all. Okay. Yeah. That's always a fair question.
No, I mean, it's like I was worried, but I've never used the annotation, so I was just wondering why you would use it.
Yeah, it is always good practice to use it. Yeah, and the nice thing is that when you're working in Eclipse or in IntelliJ, like it'll typically add them for you, like for anything that it knows you're overriding.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you like auto generate something, it'll put the override annotation. So I always like to keep it. The only time where I don't like it, but there's two instances where I don't like to see those add overrides. One is in anonymous inner classes.
Mm.
If I'm implementing runnable or something, I don't care. Like obviously the run method is going to be like duh, right? So it's just clutter in that case. So that's case number one. Anonymous inner classes. And case number two is when I'm teaching Java fundamentals, because then people ask me, "Hey, what's that?" And I say, "I don't want to talk about it yet." So that's the other time where I don't like it. All right. All right. Cool. So that's so we made a small change to our entities so that the things that have URLs. So that's good. So now your job is going to be. All right. So we've got. So that's taken care of. So your job is going to be now implement the Office controller. Again, you probably want to base it off of which controller will be the best one to base it off of. Person, right? Yeah, so base it off of the person controller. Do all of your usual copy, like find and replace stuff. Make sure to add the company to get Office model. Yeah.
If instead of HSQL, if we have MySQL,
Mm-hmm.
where would these the SQL statements be generated and kept by the Hibernate package?
Where would they be kept?
Would they be kept, or would they?
No. Hibernate doesn't keep any of this stuff. The only reason why we can see the log like it is because of HSQL. So you would have to turn on MySQL logging or something like that. Yeah, it'd be specific to MySQL.
So the SQL statements that are generated by Hibernate are not logged anywhere within Hibernate.
No. what was it, like Tuesday evening or something, right? We tried turning on Hibernate logging, but it gave us something that we didn't like, something we couldn't really reason about. Yeah, so that was.
What's the difference between H2 and HSQ?
I don't know. I was looking at that recently.
Because
I
have this.
I think they're related, but
so
I
have
don't.
this. There's a book I have called Pro Spring 3.
Mhm.
So they use H2 and they say that it's part of the STS and Spring framework, so everybody uses that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it really doesn't matter which you use as long as it works.
And what's the difference between MyBatis and JPA?
I have no exposure to MyBatis. I've seen the name, but I have no idea what it is. All right, so this is what to do, right? Implement the Office controller, and then in doing so, you know, everything will like the code will look fine at a certain point, but it won't work. so that's going to cause some interesting discussion.
Did you check in?
Yeah.
changes?
Yeah. So I've had the recording paused, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed in retrospect that I didn't get my story about Professor Thomasia on the recording.
A question?
Yeah.
So you know how in the view for the ad we had this company ideas hidden because that's where we are gonna
Mhm.
add an office, right? So I would assume that company ID would be passed to the controller, and from the company ID we would look up the company using the controller.
For sorry, you lost me. In the oops, what did I just do? You're talking about in the
office ad office view,
add office view. Yes.
we have this hidden company ID.
We have this
But
hidden
at some
company
point
ID.
we would have to use the company ID to look up the company, and then when we add an office, we would have to pass.
We need a company repository even in an office.
Yeah, so it would be
Wait,
a
yeah,
repository.
Yeah. So we actually in our office controller we need company
Company
repository,
Yeah,
and we need office repository both.
yes, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find one by company ID and set it to the company, right? In the office.
Mm.
Because you're passing the entire company object, right, in the
Mhm.
constructor.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you also need to pass the ID in the ad, right?
When
In the office.
yes, and maybe I
Yeah,
didn't do
that
that. Yeah, I think I may have forgotten to do that in the office. In the company view.
Yeah.
We need an add an office link. Yeah, I forgot to do that. So there's an edit company. There should also be an ahref equals. Well, what's it gonna look like?
Company.
But sorry, we don't. Wait a
You just
minute.
need
Wait.
ID, right?
Wait, I screwed up. No, company dot. No, wait a minute. What am I doing? Office
Yeah.
question mark add company ID equals company.id. Right, that's our add office link. Yeah, I forgot to do that. Right, this is how we're gonna add offices.
Another question. So office also has a name,
Yes.
but the constructor we have takes an attribute from the company.
Did we forget to put the name? Where is office? Man, I've screwed this up twice now. Thank you. Ay. It's okay. This was code that we wrote yesterday, and we can always blame our yesterday selves today. That's okay. All right. Okay, so what were we trying to do? We were trying to make a Office repository. That's pretty easy. Oops. All right, so we've got an Office repository. Let's close all this stuff again. Man, I keep having all kinds of stuff open. All right, we'll copy person controller and make a Office controller, right? Do our great find and replace. All right. So what were the changes that we needed to make here in Office controller?
We need a company repository.
Yeah. So for Office add, for a get add Office.
We need a model as well as a.
Yeah, we need actually quite a bit of extra stuff, right? So we need a. Here, let's get our auto wired private company
Why
repository.
do you need auto-wired there for the repository?
We need Spring to inject a company repository for us, right?
Okay.
All right, so get add Office. We need to inject
Model,
a model. What else do we need to inject?
company underscore ID, request parameter.
Yeah, we need that request param. Yeah, exactly.
So the placement of model as a parameter could be anywhere. It will automatically be determined by the.
Yeah. I'm kind of doing them in this order just through my own convention, but
But there's no.
yeah, there's no it's not it doesn't actually affect anything. I could switch the order. I've called a company underscore ID here, which is sort of kind of not Java variable names, but it's just because I'm lazy. So that I don't have to say company ID here.
I'm sorry, why did you add
Yeah,
the
let's-
model object?
Why did I add the model object? You tell me.
Because I'm going to read it to the company page.
Let's look at the add view again. Oh, it's the wrong one. Sorry.
Need the company.
Yeah.
So a company has to be part of the model, right? That means we need a model. Never mind what's in the model. We need we need a model, and so when we need a model, we always get it injected like this, right? This is the same as everything else that we've done, right? Our Spring MVC pattern is, we take some request params in, and this model is basically, you can think of it like an out param.
Right. Yeah, so because here we added it because we are going to use it to pass the company object.
Yeah. So we actually need. We actually need to add that attribute in the model, right? Yeah, so that's oddity number one. I mean, that's not too odd, but it's different from what we've done before. Right. This is all again. This is all because we're not at the top level of our data model anymore. We're actually like down a level.
I mean, this does make sense, but I guess, I don't know.
You're not happy. Why are you not happy, Nipa?
No good explanation.
I mean,
I guess
I think I understand actually. I mean, the thing that we've been doing so far has made has been very clear. We've done it twice now. It's a pattern that we can follow, and we expect that because it's been working, that we should be able to follow the same model. So, like I said, I've made you complacent. We expect consistency from our additional controllers, our additional views, but this isn't going to be consistent with what we've done.
I guess to me it's not natural, it's not intuitive. That's what it feels like.
That when we want to add an office, we need to know which company.
I mean, if you think from the UI perspective, it does make sense.
Mm.
But when I look at this, and somehow it bugs me, and I don't have a good explanation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like part of the issue is that we're using. So here's part of what bugs me. Is that we're using our controller to do two things. We're using our controller's get methods to render these views, and we're using our controller's post methods to handle the form actions. Normally, like, again, the way that I've sort of done web development most recently is using static HTML files and all AJAX. So any of these gets or whatever, like, just is a pure get on a static file of some sort. So like it shouldn't, we shouldn't see anything in a controller about that,
Right.
and it should always just pull from the REST service.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess maybe here we're seeing two things happening, and I guess I kind of view it as for action oriented, controller doing just the action
Mhm.
they're supposed to do.
yeah,
not really
yeah, exactly.
getting mixed
You normally
with
think
how
of your
rendered- yeah.
you normally think of your
Getting
controller
mixed
as supplying the actions in your system,
Yeah.
the state transitions of some sort. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yesterday also we did that, but I don't know, somehow today it bugged me more than
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, because we are adding substantial complexity here. We've got two different repositories that we're pulling stuff from, right?
Because I guess they're doing more than what they're supposed to do. That's what it feels
Yeah,
like.
and I'll agree that like from sort of a high level architecture perspective, like I don't love this design.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not fully like in love
Okay.
with
Now
this.
I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's our add office method. I think our edit office method is probably okay, right?
Yeah.
Let's just go and check the view again. So office. Yeah, so office was the only thing that we needed in the model. And that's all that we populate the model with, so we're okay. All right. View, again, I think that was also no problem there. All right, so how about adding an office?
Company ID.
Yeah, we need company ID.
Yeah.
Here, let's. Company ID. Actually, I'll put it first just to be consistent with the order that's in the form. It's arbitrary, but whatever. So company ID and
Company repository.
yeah, we need to actually again look it up in the company repository. Right. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, then what else? Then we're good. All right, edit office. Yeah, edit office should be okay. And then delete office. What do you think about delete office? Should be okay.
Redirection should be a little different.
Oh yeah, the redirection should be to the company.
Companies.
Yeah. All right. So then, how do we find the company?
It's there in the office object, right?
Yeah. So we need to, instead of just deleting by ID, we need to do this in 2 steps, right? We need to delete the office and then redirect to office. Sorry. We can actually just say office.getCompany.get URL, right? By the way, these redirects, I realized we were a little bit lazy about this, right? Like this redirect link here, this redirect to office ID equals office.getID. This is a little code duplication, right? We could just say office.getURL.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway. That would.
To replace it all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. Maybe I'll do that while you're taking a break or something. Okay. So great. So we think that this should work. We think that this should work. Of course we're wrong, but we'll find out. All right, here we go. Let's run this. I'm not running already, am I? I am recording, aren't I? Yeah, good. Okay. All right, so the server is started, which means that I should be able to open up my Chrome. Oops, come on. Localhost contacts, okay. Here we go. So we're gonna add a new company, right? We need a company to put an office in. So I'll call my company Tesla. I really like Tesla. Oh, yours crashed already? When? When you hit add? Oh, yeah. Did you get this error? Yeah. Could not initialize proxy, no session. Yeah. So that's problem number 1.
This is when you try to add a company.
Yeah, this is when we try to add a company. Now I'll give you a hint just to start with that the problem isn't with adding companies. Adding offices. Adding the office actually worked. We should be able to verify that by looking at the database. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, adding companies, right? Yeah. So we did successfully add the company. That was fine. If we look at the stack trace, and this, I mean, the stack trace sucks, right? The stack trace is kind of impenetrable. But one thing you'll notice is that we're in.
View.
We're
trying to loop through when we're in our views, right?
Yeah,
we're trying to loop through the list of.
We're trying to loop through the list of
We have
offices.
nothing. Yeah.
Which we don't have, right?
Which we don't have, but that
Well,
work.
it should be an empty set, right?
Yeah.
And looping through an empty set should just do nothing, right? I mean, that should be okay, right? Yeah. So we're in this for each, and then we can see that we're in this. We're looking in Hibernate in persistent set iterator. And then we get into this interesting stuff. It says with temporary session if needed. lazy initialization exception. And that's the crux of it, lazy initialization exception. So this is the biggest hint that I'll here. Let me. Yeah. Yeah. What here? Emphasize the crap out of this. Lazy. All right. So what do you think about lazy initialization in Hibernate? What does that remind you of?
The strategy.
It doesn't load the office object immediately.
Yeah, it's not.
So you have a link of company.
Yeah, we have. So remember that our one-to-one associations were fetched eagerly by default.
Yeah.
Well, one-to-many associations are fetched lazily by default.
So why should it throw an exception if it's lazy? It should actually do its job, right?
It should actually do its job, right? That's the reason why it's saying here is no session. Basically, what it's saying is it can't get an entity manager. It doesn't.
Can't get an entity manager.
Yeah, it can't. And the sort of the rationale for that, I'll explain a little bit more in detail later. We're going to solve this the simple way first. We're going to say that, okay, well, if we can't do lazy loading, then we've got to do eager loading. Yeah.
But it was able to add company, right? So that means it did have an access to.
At that point in time, it
Then
did.
it lost the access. And
But then when we're trying to render the JSP, we're no longer in a we don't have like a persistence context at that point anymore. So all of this magic stuff that we've been doing, where we explicitly, or I guess basically we have an entity manager, we do some stuff with it, right? Because of our repositories. Well, those entity managers don't hang around. Our lazy. Remember we saw that there was like a JavaSys proxy object that was generated by Hibernate for these lazy loaded associations. So that JavaSys proxy object is trying to pull an entity manager out of thin air. It doesn't have a reference to the one that was used. Why not? Why not, right? I mean, you would think it would make sense that proxy object should hang on to the entity manager that was used to create it in the first place. As far as I can tell, the reason why they don't do that is because they hate you, and they want you to suffer. That's the crux of it as far as in my professional experience. I would say there's no good reason.
because otherwise it would have just worked fine, right?
Otherwise, it would have just worked fine.
Even though with lazy initialization, it would have worked fine.
Yeah.
If we had the handle, right?
Yeah. So it's really like doing this is really like defeating the point of lazy initialization in the first place. Like when could we ever use that? All right. So
One more question. So
Mhm.
I guess this brings me to a question that how do I know when I can rely on lazy?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is if you
And
see,
then for the
if you
exception
see this
from
exception, you can't rely on lazy initialization.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the answer?
That's the answer.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
So as a programmer, is it safer to just always go eager?
Yeah.
It's safer, but it's not efficient. So a little bit later, I'll show you a different way of dealing with this problem.
One more question. So, okay, this exception will tell me if I can go lazy or not, but
Mhm.
would it reliably fail?
Yes.
It would always fail.
Yes.
And it will never ever have this handle to the.
Yeah. It's not
It's not like
non-deterministic.
out of the blue one day it fails.
Yeah. No. This is
That's a problem.
yeah. This is
Reliable in failure.
at least the failure is deterministic. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. Right. So I mentioned something. I think I mentioned at the end of yesterday that we would cover something called the open session in view pattern, which isn't really a pattern, but we just call it that anyway. right? We don't have a session. We don't have a Hibernate session. Or, you know, in JPA parlance, we don't have an entity manager. We don't have a way of getting one. So that's going to be the right way to deal with this, but we'll deal with it the hacky way for now. Just so
Then
that,
later we.
and later we'll deal with it the right way. Well, I mean, I guess I would say actually both ways are hacky, but at least the other way is efficient and hacky. This way is inefficient. So how if we want a, well, what do we need? You guys tell me. Eager loading where? In company, yeah. Yeah, this one to many. We need fetch equals eager. Yeah.
Mine looks different. I have a join table in yours.
Oh, that's probably stale from yesterday. Have you been pulling from Git? Oh, okay. You'll have the same problem either way. Yeah. Your schema looks slightly different, but it's okay. Yeah. So this is going to be approach number 1 to dealing with the problem. All right. So let's stop the server. Restart. Oy, 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 oy. All right, started. Add a new company, Tesla, add. Okay. All right. So we have now eagerly loaded this empty set. Right. Was that clear enough? Did that make sense? Like we were trying to lazily fetch, but it was so lazy that we didn't even have an entity manager anymore. So we'll just say eagerly fetch instead. Okay. All right, now let's keep trying to test this thing, right? Let's add an office, because that was the whole point. Let's add the derp office, which naturally is is my office. Add. Yeah. Another problem. Transient property value exception. What's up with that?
Does that transient property it did not generate the ID? The
Save that. So this is sometimes Hibernate gives us really useless error messages, and sometimes it gives us really useful error messages. So I think this is one of the useful cases, fortunately. It says that the address is referencing. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Actually, the problem that I thought it was isn't the problem that it is, and good thing I actually looked at this. Right. So check this out. Office.address is referencing address. Okay, so let's look at the office.address field. Office.address, office.address. Okay. Does anything seem amiss here?
specify loading strategy?
No, loading strategy isn't the problem. But you're on the right track. I'll give you a hint. What other one-to-one associations do we have in our system? Yeah, person to address, right? Person has an address.
Cascading.
Cascading, yeah, yeah. We're trying to save a new office and a new address at the same time, right? But since we've forgotten to cascade, we're trying to save an office with a reference to an address that's not actually in the DB yet. So we need to make sure to cascade. Oh, you already had that? Oh, awesome. Very good. Yeah, so we're going to need that. This was, you remember, we just kind of whipped this stuff up yesterday. Yeah, whoa, what's going on? That's curious. We just kind of whipped this class up yesterday, you know, our company and contacts and all that stuff, and we didn't really do a whole lot of testing on it yet. So we're shaking out bugs now in our entities. While we're at it, well, no, never mind. While we're at it, good enough. All right. All right. So we've got a cascade type of all now. So let's try rerunning this once again. So anytime we do anything with an office, it's going to make sure that that changes to the address that belongs to the office are saved, right? All right, so let's go back to contacts again. Unfortunately, we got to sort of do this repeatedly. Add a new company, Tesla, add. Add a new office, Tesla, add. Hey, all right. So this is good. We've got an office called Tesla at 123 Ho-Ho Street in Oakland. And we can go back to the company, so that back to company link works. So that's good news. Tesla has a Tesla office link. I guess I should probably make this a little bit clearer. I'll edit the office to say, you know, Tesla office number 1. Right. Back to Tesla. So that seems pretty good. It's showing up in our list. Right, we can add another office like Tesla office number 2. Oops. Yeah. Back to Tesla. Yeah, so these are both here. If we wanted these to be sorted, we actually could. We could sort them. But say okay for now. So this all looks pretty good. What else do we need to test? Delete, right? Yeah. All right, so let's try deleting an office. Wait a minute. That worked. That wasn't... What? That wasn't supposed to work? How did that work? How did that work? That literally wasn't supposed to work. I'm a little bit curious about this. Let me look at the database real quick and see what I can see here. I have a feeling, I have a weird feeling about this. You've got to be kidding me. I have no idea why that worked.
What happened when you
What did
delete
you
the,
expect?
I expected it to do nothing.
when you tried deleting one? The office?
When I tried deleting the office. Now I'm really upset. Let me look at that office controller again. see, here's the thing. This is code that looks like it should work. And in the past, it might have something to do with the strict. Well, maybe we'll come back to this. I guess we can be happy that it's working. I was expecting it not to, but maybe that's okay. Yeah.
What did you expect to change after seeing the failure, if there was a failure?
I expected to have to delete this office in a completely different way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I expected that the deletion simply would do nothing. We would see nothing in the database that changed. And
How different is it? Delete office?
I have a strange theory. Let me try something real quick. This is a ridiculous theory, but I'm going to try it right now. Because that may be a difference between the reference code that I had written and this code. That worked too. All right, well.
Why do you think it wouldn't have worked? What's the rationale behind that?
Because I've done well, obviously I've done something different, but I've literally had this not work in the past.
No, but you knew the reason why it wasn't working, right?
I thought I knew the reason.
What was that reason?
Because because the company still has a reference to the office.
No, but the only control is this side, right? Office has a control.
In the object model, it doesn't. It shouldn't matter.
That's a database, right?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm confused. So if you ask me questions about what I thought, what I thought was probably wrong. My best guess right now is that it has to do with the eager versus lazy strategy.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that. Actually, you know what? Probably best to do this now. Here, let's talk about this now. Why wouldn't I want this change over here? Sorry, not contact, company. Why wouldn't I want our set of offices to be fetched eagerly every time I get a company?
Maybe you just want to look at the basic company information and don't care about the offices.
Yeah, maybe I just want the company name, for example, right? Like, let's say I'm at my view contacts list, basically my homepage for this application, right? Every time I view that page, what's going to happen? What's my database query going to look like?
You go to the office and load up all the
Like, I'm going to be joining on basically everything in the DB.
in the DB.
Really everything in the DB, right?
Company office address, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to do that, right? So I don't want this fetch type of eager. I want it to still be lazy. I'd really like this thing to be lazy. Because again, like optimizing for that case, optimizing for that particular use case, which is probably a very common use case, we'll say that issuing 2 queries for the case where I need to look at a particular company, we'll say that that's okay. Issuing two requests, we'll say that that's going to be better performance overall than joining on everything in the main list. So I'm going to show you something that would be hard to derive from first principles. It's this this thing I've mentioned a couple times, this open session review pattern. Basically, the thing that we need, the problem that we'd had initially, where the lazy association couldn't be fetched later because we didn't have an entity manager to work with. The typical way, and I'll tell you this is typical even if it's not pretty, but the typical way of dealing with this is to add a servlet filter. Have you guys heard of servlet filters before? A servlet filter is kind of similar to a servlet, but it's like a shim between a request and a servlet. So it's something that like handles a request before it gets to the servlet, and maybe also handles a response after the servlet deals with it.
If you were to do some sort of, let's say, custom validation or custom something, you would use filters?
Yeah, you would. Yeah. So for example, for user authentication, yeah, exactly. You would use a servlet filter. So that you don't have all that code populating all of your.
Is built into Spring.
Hmm?
Is the servlet filter hooks, are they built into?
Well, we have. I mean, we're still just in a J2EE environment, so we can just use regular servlet filters.
So
And here,
J2EE has specified servlet filters.
yeah, that's a standard J2EE thing. Yeah. So so let's think of here. I'm going to draw a really terrible diagram. Here, let's do this. Control 2. Let's do this in blue. All right, terrible diagram time. Ready? All right. So request comes in. And normally it would be dealt with by some servlet. So in this case, it's Spring's. I'll just call this S for Spring, but it's Spring's request dispatcher, and that's the thing that delegates to all of our controllers that we write. And then we've also got views, right? So our controller is going to be returning some model, and it's going to there we go. So normally, right, the Spring's request dispatcher will issue the request out to the controller. The controller will respond by populating a model and saying which view it wants to populate, and then finally, things will get handled. But since this request dispatcher is just a regular servlet, we can interpose a filter. Here, let's. Ooh, here we go. Yeah. We can interpose a filter in between where the request comes in and where Spring's request dispatcher picks up. Okay. Let's do green now. All right. Normally, or so far, where have we been opening our entity manager? Where have we been in the servlet? Actually, in the controller, right?
Yeah.
So right now, the entity manager is scoped here. So anything that we're doing inside our controller, we have an entity manager for. But then, when our method returns and we're back in here, we don't have an entity manager anymore, and so hence our problem, right? So let's say instead that we're going to introduce a filter in front of this whole big thing that will have the entity manager in this whole, available to this whole scope.
Why can't you do it in the server itself?
In Spring's request dispatcher. Because it doesn't. It doesn't, like, Spring's request dispatcher doesn't automatically assume that we're going to be using JPA and stuff, which sucks because we probably are, right? I mean, any Java enterprise application is probably using JTA, but
not to use JPA, maybe something else, right?
Mhm,
Even
mhm.
in that case, it would make sense to have whatever is equivalent of entity manager.
the issue is just that we don't have any control over this thing, right? This is a servlet that Spring's framework has provided, and we don't have any control over its implementation, and it can't make any assumption about what we're doing either, right? So this thing is as generic as possible.
Why can't you put it in the view?
Because the view is, well, I mean,
Because that's where we want it, right?
it's a good question, right? Why can't we put it in the view? Because that exactly, that's where we need it. We need it to somehow be available or in scope in the
Except
view.
for the fact that it's not a good design pattern.
Well, that's the answer. Yeah,
But you
yeah.
can put it there.
It's possible. Yeah, but yeah, it's clumsy. So
How can you put the EM in the view?
have a scriptlet.
We have a Java code.
Have a scriptlet in that JSP that gets an any manager.
But then as I said, right, it's
Yeah.
loading business value or
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
But
So
I mean, I still seriously think that it can really be done in the servlet itself. So
in the servlet.
it makes sense. And that's in the
Or-
right place.
Yeah, or can you have that filter between the servlet and the controller? Is there a filter or some kind of a hook there?
Not really. No, controllers are sort of the only thing here. So this is I'll tell you that this is basically the best that we can do is to introduce a servlet filter that gets the entity manager, and so that sort of provides it to this whole scope. It's clunky, it's ugly, but the good news is that it's already sort of written for us. We just need to put one additional thing in our web XML.
One more question.
Mhm.
So is this a limitation of how Spring dispatcher servlet works? Or if, let's say, if it was not Spring dispatch servlet, if it was a traditional servlet environment?
Yeah. So for example, right, if our servlet was within its own scope, if it was going and figuring out how to render the view, we wouldn't have a problem.
Okay, so
The problem is
Spring servlet.
it's the way yeah. So this is a Spring problem.
Okay.
One more quick question.
Mhm.
See, so in the controller, we know that it is lazily loading, right?
Yes.
So in the office, can't we do in the controller code itself? Can't I get the office? Set it by. If I try to access it, I'm sure it's going to work.
If you so if in the controller you try to access, yeah, actually that would be.
And then do a set attribute. Well, maybe create a new variable.
You wouldn't even need to set attribute. You would just need
Just
to just call get on the contact list.
Just the get, and do what?
Nothing.
Just access it once.
Just access it once, because I think
What?
that would cause it to be fetched.
To be fetched.
Yeah. So that would be another way to do it. Yeah. I mean, that's actually pretty clean. Well, these are all hacks, right?
Yeah, that was the-
These are all hacks, but I think that's also a kind of a reasonable hack. This is a pattern that I want to show you anyway, because mainly because it causes us to keep the illusion of sort of transparency. Keep our code from having to care about whether things were eagerly or lazily loaded, right? So here's what I love. This is like I've written in crayon on the screen. And, I can't. Okay. All right. So the way that we implement this, basically the way that we implement anything in web.xml is copy paste, right? So I'm going to go to my cheat sheet and copy and paste from there, because that's how it works. You can also find this on the web, of course. But I'll talk about the details of this in a moment. All right, so here we go. So this is our new addition to WebXML. We've declared that there's going to be a new servlet filter in our J2EE managed environment. We're going to give it a name called the Open Entity Manager and View Filter, which is a great name. And it's part of that Spring JPA project, the thing that we've been using so far, right? The thing that gave us our repositories. So this Open Entity Manager and View Filter, it needs to be initialized with a Entity Manager factory. Well, all right, so we know how to do that. That beans in scope, right? And then we say that the Open Entity Manager and View filter will apply to all of the paths that, well, basically all of the paths in the system. So that's going to include Spring, and it's going to include the JSPs, which is the important part. So I'm going to check this in. Well, all right.
This filter name, what is that? Open entity, what is it?
This is just a name. This is the name that I gave it because it's the same as the class name.
Do we need to create it? The class?
No, it's implemented by Spring.
This is Spring.
Yeah, this is a class that Spring provides to deal with our little problem.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a standard problem.
This is a standard problem that everybody has. Yeah. Again, since this is such a common problem, you would think that Spring's dispatcher servlet would just deal with it, but sorry, right? Okay, so let's test this. Let's see, company. Yeah, so this is now lazy again, right? Let's try to run this. We'll also see if this causes my delete bug to occur. I really want that bug to occur so that I have a justification for talking about how to fix it. Yeah, I feel awkward about that, but that's okay. I just, this happens to me. This is part of my job. All right, contacts, new company. Hey, okay. All right. So this is good. Our open session in view, or open entity manager in view, is working. We can tell it's working because it didn't crash with a no session available, whatever it was called, exception. Right. All right. Let's see if I can cause my bug to occur. Derp, add, edit, delete. This is infuriating. But hey, okay. I have one more theory. One more theory as to why this bug isn't occurring. But before I exercise that theory, let me check this code in, because surprisingly enough, it's working. So let's say that's a good thing. Let's see. All right.
So that change was only made in the web.xml, right? Related to that.
Yeah, that open session and view thing. Yeah, that was just in web.xml. I have one more theory as to why this bug is not being caused. All right. Before we get to that, though, actually, you know what? I can play around with this during the break. It's a good time for a break, anyhow. So, are there any questions on this open session and view business?
That's one of the predefined classes.
Yeah.
What are the others? Something like that.
I mean, like servlet filters like that to help out with common problems. That's really the only one that I know of.
So the diagram that you showed, right,
Mhm.
where time we introduced this
This filter. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a fuller diagram of how the whole thing is? What are the other hooks around?
No, I don't. But that's actually basically the complete diagram.
Okay.
That was basically it, right? Request comes in, filter opens the entity manager, request dispatcher figures out where the request should go.
Well, that would be the complete one for our application, right? But,
Yes. Oh, for even more general.
Yeah, the big loop of Spring Right?
Oh yeah, and that's what you were asking for was sort of a higher level overview
Yeah,
of sort of what Spring is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that. No, we can talk about that after the break.
Can you
Yeah,
try deleting the
reasonable
company?
Hmm?
It doesn't work for me.
Try hitting.
Try deleting the company.
Oh, deleting
If
the
it
company.
has offices.
Okay, yeah. We'll come
Maybe-
back to
maybe
that
this will-
because I think that's the I think that might be part of the issue.
I think maybe I didn't type properly, but you can just check.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So all right, that's not a question. Any other questions? Great. Take a break. I'm gonna try and cause my bug, and also deal with your thing. Okay.